Preparatory Committee for Habitat 3, support by UN and Habitat 3 PRIP Country. Boleh diberikan tepuk tangan yang meriah. Indonesia saat ini sudah menjadi negara yang sangat luar biasa beruntung, dan Surabaya juga sudah menjadi kota yang sangat beruntung juga sebagai pilihan dari beratus-ratus kota yang ada di Indonesia sebagai tuan rumah dari ajang yang diselenggarakan 20 tahun sekali ini. Dan pada kesempatan kali ini juga akan ada beberapa speaker atau pemateri sekaligus moderator yang akan menyampaikan apa saja tentang materi yang tentunya sangat menarik untuk bisa kita simak setiap saatnya. Jadi pastikan Anda semuanya tetap berada di sini sambil juga bisa melihat-lihat booth yang masing-masing sudah ada dan sudah memberikan informasi kepada Anda semuanya. Baik, pada kesempatan kali ini kita juga akan segera menyaksikan presentasi yang kedua yang kali ini akan disampaikan oleh narasumber kita. So I would like to invite Mr. Barrett from UN Global Complexities Program and also the moderators to give the materials today. Please welcome.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. So, as was said, we have Dr. Brendan Barrett from the UN Global Compact Cities Program joining us next. Dr. Barrett, we just had a conversation on regenerative cities. This is going to be interesting because you're juxtaposing now with the ethical cities, but ethical cities as regenerative cities is also a very integrated approach because I see that it looks at socially inclusive, at access to fair and decent work, at stopping corruption, as well as human rights and environmental sustainability. So we're very excited. I understand you have a PowerPoint, and you're going to walk us through not just the what are of the ethical cities, but also about a very exciting surprise you have for us for Quito and Habitat 3. So why don't you take the stage?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm afraid I'm probably adding to the complexity of the urban problem by introducing yet another name, this time the ethical city. For many of you, it's probably the first time that you've actually heard this term, and so what I want to do over the next 10 minutes or so is just to sort of elaborate on it. Right there you can see a picture of the mayor of Barcelona, Ada Colau, and she's actually been described as the most radical mayor in the world. And I think she's radical because she comes from an activist background, but also because she has an ethical agenda. She's all about cleaning up politics in the city. Okay, so you're probably all familiar with the contemporary urban situation, exemplified by issues of unemployment, inequality, homelessness, lack of access to affordable housing. We face in many cities failing infrastructure, congested streets, uncontrollable urban sprawl. And then at the same time we have this issue of being locked into carbon and the fossil fuel industry. But we also have problems of government accountability and corruption. All of this in the context of an ever-tightening urban purse. So, with regards to the issue of corruption, here are some data from some of the places around the world. So, for instance, in the last 40 years in Chicago, there have been 1,500 convictions related to public corruption. In Colombia, 1,380 local mayors have been charged with corruption over the past 8 years. And in Ukraine, one in all of all news reports address corruption issues in urban development. So what we're really seeing here is that corruption is an endemic problem across the world. The City of London, interestingly, has been labelled as the world's #1 home for the fruits of corruption by Transparency International. So we see this going on in various levels. This is taken from an article from The Guardian recently on what are the most corrupt cities in the world. So just take an example of fraud. This is data from my own country, and what you can see is that in 2013, based on this report, the UK was losing something in the equivalent of £52 billion a year as a result of fraud activities. And this was actually working out at local government of about £2 billion being lost through fraudulent activities. Now that's just one example, one statistic, but fraud and corruption are undermining the development process in many parts of the world. And this is my director. His argument basically is that cities that do not practice an ethical approach to governance and policy development and so on will gradually see their situation deteriorate. That's the essence of his message. They will become dysfunctional, antisocial, as the individual citizens start to think more about their own short-term interests than the benefits for the community. So, to make the case for the ethical city, there are three main points. Our first is that we can change the future of city development. That's why we're all here. That we can counter these regressive trends, and that we can advance alternatives. We can reshape the dominant urban agenda in more ethical directions. That's the very essence of the new urban agenda. And it's already happening. One example is Medellin in Colombia, where they've transformed it from a hotspot for basically the cartels' activity around drugs to a beacon, a civic beacon that is known around the world. Now Medellin is one of the signatories to the UN Global Compact. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically the UN Global Compact was launched by Kofi Annan in 2000, and there are 12,000 businesses that have signed up to it in 170 countries. And essentially there are 10 principles that you subscribe to around human rights, labour, environment, and anti-corruption. So it's essentially an ethical framework. And for businesses, this becomes part of their corporate social responsibility. And I think in that context, we're very familiar with the term ethical corporations. So those are the 10 principles. So I won't go into them in detail, but you can see it's all about labour rights and the right, freedom of association or not supporting child labour. And it's about the precautionary principle, it's about sustainability, and so on. So our activity is actually based in Australia. We have 133 cities that have signed up to the Global Compact. So they are, in a sense, signing up to the notion of becoming ethical cities and working towards that goal. The notion of ethical cities is also very much reflected in the Sustainable Development Goals, and particularly Goal number 8, which you're all familiar with, about promoting inclusive, sustainable economic growth and employment, and decent work for all. Goal number 10, which is about reducing inequality, and goal number 11, about making cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So what we're seeing is the new urban agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Global Compact principles all pointing in the same direction, which is very important. So to this, we would like to add the notion of shared ethics, basically a shared approach to thinking about what we should do in terms of tackling inequality, environmental degradation. So ethics is often seen as a very difficult idea, but it's not. It's really simple. It's really about being concerned with what is right, fair, just, or good, not what's most acceptable or expedient. So it does really pose very difficult questions to us, though. And this is a quote from Peter Singer, who says, "Is it right to spend money entertaining ourselves when we could use that money to help people living in extreme poverty?" So it's not a new idea. We're all familiar with the notion of the just city, which goes back to 1973 in David Harvey's book. But he was looking more in terms of the geography of the city and social justice. Most recently, there's a book by Susan Feinstein who looked at Amsterdam, London, New York, and she was very critical of the Olympic Games, and we've seen similar problems happening in Brazil about the benefit that such major sports activities bring for the countries that host them. So shared ethics is also described as a moral operating system for the city, and we really have to recognize that we're talking about cities in a multicultural context, and that we have to use this notion of shared ethics to find common ground between people. But it's not easy, because everybody has their primary loyalties, whether it's to race, religion, and ethnicities, but we need to find this space for a city to really become ethical and to have a real conversation about the direction it needs to go in. So these are some of the things that we've been working on, and that explains why I'm here right now. But what I want to do is finish up by talking about what we're going to do from now on, and that is the development of a massive open online course on ethical cities. And I have a short video that I'll share with you. But basically what we're going to look at is 4 different aspects: ethical leadership at the local level, planning for an ethical future, also the way that local government can influence the business environment through its spending power, and then the idea of the ethical citizen. So let me share this video with you right now. This is a trailer for the book. Just a second, we have a slight technical problem.
That's terrific. While they work on the video, I want to take advantage and ask you a couple of questions. The first is why others...
The majority of people on this planet now live and work in cities. Cities are like the beating heart of our economy. They are places of enterprise, innovation and creativity. But cities are also the sites of many social, cultural and ecological problems. If we want to make our cities more livable, then we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to positively transform our urban way of life?
Cities are fantastic. They're full of life and energy. They're complex and diverse. They invigorate and inspire us. On this course, we take you on a journey inside the workings of some of the world's most dynamic cities.
We start by exploring how the city's ethical framework can influence livability, why ethics is important, and how we can look at cities from an ethical lens. We'll find out how local governments, businesses and residents are responding to the problems of today, and we'll look at the new and exciting solutions they are developing.
Throughout the course, you'll get the chance to learn about the urban research taking place at RMIT University.
This course will be perfect for those of you already interested in cities. You don't need any specialist knowledge or expertise. The course is open to students from anywhere in the world. You'll become part of a community of scholars, sharing your views and joining discussions related to the cities around you. By the end of the course, you'll have a clear understanding of the challenges facing our cities and how an ethical, principled approach can help resolve them. Join us and be part of shaping the ethical framework for your city.
Exciting. So that will be released in Habitat 3 in Quito. Thank you. So my first question, and I've been dying to interrupt you. Why ethical cities? Why not embed the tenets of ethical cities into the just and inclusive cities, the language that we already have? We talked about regenerative cities immediately preceding, we have smart cities, we have so many cities. So people are confused. Which kind of city do they want? Why not, why ethical, why not embed?
That's a great question. And I think the essence is, why not just go with just cities? And that was actually probably something came up when we were working on an Urban Thinkers campus in Melbourne as part of the City We Need process, where there was a similar confusion. Why do you need ethics in addition to just? Well, justice is almost a little bit about, if you look at the work of David Harvey, it's about dealing with the political ramifications of bad decisions. Some justice is when normally becomes an issue when somebody has dealt an injustice. And we felt that that doesn't really reflect the ethical dimension, because the ethical dimension also determines, for instance, just how local government works, and the need for, say, an ethics commission or whistleblower program and so on and so forth. It's about ethical leadership, what's expected from our leaders, and there are also lots of guidelines on how that could work. But it's also about the role of the citizen as an ethical citizen, and that justice doesn't really capture that. And I think the socially inclusive, all of those terms are very, very important, but if we just slip ethics in, it adds another dimension to what our expectations might be for cities in the future, and what our roles are, whether we're a city official, a citizen, a local business person. It's relevant to all of those roles.
The issue of ethical cities, as you said very correctly, translates into trust into governance and into the capacity of the government to deliver what they say they're going to do. I know it's a very important stream of work for the OECD, and they're working a lot on governance, transparency. Have you been collaborating with other institutions that are working also on this issue of governance, trust, anti-corruption?
No, we haven't, because it's actually just become an area of, say, transparency and so. So we've just started to move in that direction, and now we are beginning to develop the partnerships. So it's from now on that we'll be doing more of that.
Thank you. We're going to be taking 2 or 3 questions. So terrific. We have one in front right there. Thank you, sir. Introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is An Chen from the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network here. So in my role, I work with a lot of global cities around the world, and trying to bring them on board to global cities, like the Global Cities, Company of Mayors, and all these like global cities program. And I always have the challenge of how to get them on board, how to convince them the benefits of joining these city-to-city networks, all these global initiatives. So can I draw on your wisdom, like how can you pitch this to the cities? Like maybe within 1 minute, how can you convince the local government officials on the benefits of joining the Global Cities program or other city-to-city networks, so that we bring the cities on board to the global level? Thank you.
Terrific, great question. So how do you pitch that to mayors? And I would add, our national governments also have to be ethical. How do you pitch it up and down so it's vertical, so all of our government institutions are ethical?
Yeah, That is a fantastic question, and actually we haven't done any pitching at all since we started our activities. It's completely up to the cities to decide whether or not they want to sign up to the 10 Global Compact Principles. And it's a relatively small number when you think about it. 133 have done so. I think the reason is because we've also not done this promotional activity, and most people associate the Global Compact actually with the main target audience, which is businesses. So they've been very, very successful in getting businesses to sign up to it, but less so in terms of cities. But that's from now on. That's where we're going to put our efforts in. But it's all about promoting your network and thinking about what's the real attraction, but also what's the niche. And as I mentioned, our niche is very much the ethical dimension of how cities function.
Thank you. Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, Tom?
Good morning. Tom D'Alessio from Next City. We're a nonprofit organization all about inspiring change in cities. How do you approach the issue of ethical cities without sounding preachy or judgmental? And how do you communicate with mayors and other officials without them feeling defensive?
Or how do you propose, because you're going to be doing this?
Did I sound preachy? Because actually, two great points. So with regard to the second point, it's a radical agenda. And so the initial reaction from many local officials is, I'm not quite sure how I should respond. But then there are others who see it as a very useful tool that they can apply in order to improve things in their cities. And I guess those are sort of the visionary leaders, or the leaders who want to bring about, let's say, change the status quo. So it should be attractive to them, but I also appreciate that many mayors may say, I don't really want to go near there. How to avoid preaching? I think the main point is that it's really up to each city to decide what their ethical framework is, and so it's very much situated in the local context. But the general point is to really ask the question, what should we be doing? What's the right thing to do? What's the fair thing to do based on your circumstances? And not to say that there's this predetermined notion of what's right, good. And so we're very much looking towards cities to find their way forward. And this is very interesting because we've seen some cities that have developed their own compact, their local compact. So what they've done is they've taken the 10 Global Compact Principles and then they've modified them to reflect their circumstances. And I think that's a good way to go forward as well.
Thank you. I have a question in terms of what your organization does, your role, your function. Are you more of a think tank and research, like developing these principles, or do you consider yourself a network, or is it the curriculum? Are you a capacity builder? Are you all of these? How do you see your role in all of this work?
So our main role is to support the 133 cities that sign up to the Global Compact, and that is in terms of helping them to elaborate on their programs. What are they going to do around sustainability? But sometimes it's about repackaging what's already there. So that's one side of it. And then also trying to share their best practices amongst the network of cities. Capacity development hasn't been a major activity up until now, but we think that we can take advantage of the digital world and use something like this massive open online course to raise awareness. And we've been informed that a successful week can attract in the region of 30 to 40,000 people. So what we're trying to do then is get more and more people aware of the notion of the ethical city, and then to start asking the question, why isn't my city an ethical city? Or how can I make my city an ethical city? So that's where the direction we're going in from now.
We have time for one last question from the audience. Do we have one last question? Okay, we'll take my question, which is, what is the intersection between the ethical cities, so ethical governance, and the business sector. At the Ford Foundation, where I work, we have something called inclusive economies, understanding that there's a lot of responsibility on business and trying to push and make high road business common every day. So how do you see these two worlds coming together?
That's a really great question, and it's actually also at the heart of what we do because we're part of the Global Compact. So most of the members or signatories are businesses. So we work very closely with the local Global Compact networks in each country, and we try to encourage collaboration between the cities and the businesses. But we also, as I pointed out in the MOOC, we have this notion that local government can do a great deal to work with business to promote more ethical practices at the local level. Now, local governments inject a large amount of money into the local economy, which is for local businesses, and so they can use that in terms of their procurement practices to bring about some improvements. But they can also work with businesses to sort of promote a more ethical way of dealing, even business to business. So I think there's a lot of potential for businesses and local governments to work in cities to be part of this transformative process. And we're already seeing it happening in many places, and I would give a good example is Oslo. What Oslo is doing in terms of how it works with business, its procurement policies and so on, is quite fantastic. And we'd like to see that sort of example spread around the world because it is transformative in a positive direction.
Transformative in a positive direction. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Barrett. Can we invite you to give a round of applause?